Welcome to eDufundae. I am your mentor for the chapter Plant Kingdom. We will discuss the topic Bryophytes under this. So, what are Bryophytes? Bryophytes are the organisms that include various liverworts, hornworts and mosses. They are found commonly growing in moist shaded areas in the hills, as we can see in this display. So while we are talking about bryophytes, these are the organisms that are archegoniate, they are embryophytic and atracheophytic cryptogams. That means archegoniate से हम क्या समझते हैं कि इनमें जो फीमेल सेक्स ऑर्गन होता है that is called as archegonia, and this archegonia is a multicellular flask shaped structure and it produces single egg at a time. Embryophytic, that means the life cycle of bryophytes will show the stage of embryo in it, and also they are atracheophytic. Atracheophytic से हमारा मतलब है that means they have the absence of vascular bundle. Bryophytes lower organisms and they are not well developed like angiosperms and gymnosperms in which we see the proper vascular bundles. So they are atracheophytic cryptogams, that means they have the lack of vascular bundles. Further we see that they are also called as the amphibians of plant kingdom. एम्फीबियन ऑर्गेनिज्म से हम क्या समझते हैं, जो कि लैंड पे भी रहता है और वाटर में भी रहता है. तो हम ब्रायोफाइट्स को एम्फीबियंस क्यों बोलते हैं? Because they require moisture for the reproduction. So we can say these plants live in moist soil and are dependent on water for sexual reproduction. So they require either water or the moist soil for the reproduction process. Otherwise, they are living on the land, and that is why both are required. For sexual reproduction, water is required, and for life, they are living on the land. That is why they are called as the amphibians of the plant kingdom. They are the primitive land plants and usually occur in damp, humid and shaded localities. They play an important role in plant succession on bare rocks. So, while we are talking about xerosphere के केस में हम क्या देखते हैं कि एक bare rock के ऊपर जब life emerge होनी start होती है, तो initially the lichens begin to grow over there. The Crustose lichen, after that foliose lichen is there, and those lichens, after the stage of lichen, there comes the stage of mosses, and those mosses are nothing but the bryophytes. So here we can see the growth of mosses on the bare rock, and that is why they lead to the plant succession. The plant body of bryophytes is more differentiated than that of algae. That means they are considered higher than the algae and lower than the Teredidophytes, angiosperms and gymnosperms. So they have the more differentiated body. In case of algae, we saw the thallus-like structure, but here it is the thallus-like and prostrate or erect and attached to the substratum by unicellular or multicellular rhizoids. So in this structure, we can see there is the presence of rhizoids, and the rhizoids are helping the body to attach to the substratum. They lack true roots, stems or leaves. So जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि ये अभी इतने एडवांस स्ट्रक्चर्स नहीं है कि इनके पास प्रॉपर डिफरेंशिएटेड ऑर्गन्स हो. इनके पास रूट्स, ट्रू रूट्स, द स्टेम्स एंड लीव्स नहीं होती बिकॉज दे आर कंपैरेटिवली लोअर ऑर्गेनिजम्स. द मॉसेस possess root-like rhizoids, leaf-like phylloids and stem-like colloids. So they have such structures because they are not exactly the true roots, stems or leaves. So we call them the rhizoids, phylloids and colloids that we can see in the diagram. Next we have that the plant body consists of parenchymatous tissue. The main plant body of the bryophyte is haploid, and haploid से हमारा क्या मतलब है? That the number of chromosomes, if it is 2n, we are calling it as diploid. But in this case, the main plant body that is called as the gametophyte is a haploid structure. In case of algae, the main plant body was sporophyte, but in this case, the main plant body is gametophyte because it produces gametes and it is a haploid structure. The sex organs in bryophytes are multicellular, they are jacketed and are stalked. So we can see the sex organs, that is Antheridium, it is the male sex organ, and the Archegonium, which is the female sex organ. They are proper multicellular structures. They are jacketed and stalked. The male sex organ is called as Antheridium, and Antheridium produce biflagellate enterozoids. That means the gametes that are produced are called as enterozoids. On the other hand, while we are talking about the female sex organ, it is called as Archegonium. And as I told you, it is a flask-shaped structure and it produces eggs. And egg एक time पे सिर्फ single egg produce होगा and it is a feature of it. So here we can see the structure of the female gametophyte and male gametophyte. Female gametophyte Archegonium is producing the egg, whereas the male gametophyte, the Antheridium, is producing the enterozoids, and both are the gametes that are being produced. The enterozoids are released into water where they come in contact with Archegonium, and after coming in contact with Archegonium, it will fuse with the egg to produce the zygote. And this kind of fertilization is called as zooidogamous oogamy. The zygotes do not undergo reduction division immediately. So what happens exactly? They produce a multicellular body called as sporophyte. The sporophyte is not free living but attached to the photosynthetic gametophyte and derives the nourishment from it. So हम इससे क्या कहना चाह रहे हैं कि जो हमारे पास gametophyte है, photosynthetic gametophyte है, उसके साथ जो sporophyte का structure है वो attached रहेगा, because स्पोरोफाइट हमारे पास कहाँ से प्रोड्यूस हुआ है? क्योंकि जाइगोट ने इमीडिएट डिवीजन नहीं शो की, उसने इनिशियली क्या बनाया? स्पोरोफाइट बनाया, और ये स्पोरोफाइट अटैच रहेगा गेमेटोफिटिक बॉडी के साथ so that it can get the nourishment. So here is the representation of the same. The gametophytic body is already there, that is haploid. It is producing a sporophyte, that is diploid, because it is formed from the fusion of 2N, right? And it will lead to the formation of sporophyte, that is diploid. Now this diploid sporophyte remains attached to the gametophyte for the purpose of nourishment. So here we see the structure of sporophyte. Next we have some cells of the sporophytes called as spore mother cells undergo reduction division to produce haploid spores. So reduction division, that means meiosis will take place in the spore mother cells, and meiosis will lead to the formation of haploid spores. Because it is a diploid structure, when the reduction division will take place, it will lead to the haploid spore formation. So these are the haploid spores, and these spores germinate to produce the gametophyte. So again a gametophyte will be produced. So this gametophyte is again the new body that is formed, and it is again the haploid body. All bryophytes are homosporous. So what do we understand by homosporous? That means the spores are of one kind and are not differentiated by sex. So such kind of spores are called as homosporous, right? The bryophytes are homosporous organisms. They show heteromorphic alternation of generation because gametophytic and sporophytic bodies are conspicuously different, and the life cycle is haplodiplontic. Why haplodiplontic? Because the main plant body is haploid and it will lead to the formation of diploid sporophyte. So this kind of life cycle is called as haplodiplontic. So here we see that if we begin from the gametophyte, so the gametophyte, that is the main actual plant body, is the haploid structure. By mitosis, it leads to the formation of the egg and sperms, that means the gametes. These gametes, after undergoing fertilization, they will form a diploid zygote. This diploid zygote will form diploid embryo, and the diploid embryo is forming the diploid sporophyte. और अभी हमने डिस्कस किया कि स्पोरोफाइट से फर्दर जो स्पोर मदर सेल डेवलप होगा वो आगे स्पोर्स की फॉर्मेशन करेगा, एंड दो स्पोर्स विल बी हैप्लॉइड. Again those spores will form the main plant body that will be haploid. So this is the haplodiplontic life cycle that we observe in case of bryophytes. The bryophytes in general are of relatively little economic importance. Some mosses provide food for herbaceous mammals, birds and other animals. Whereas the main role that can be seen out of peat is the species of sphagnum, that is a moss, provides peat so that it can be used as a fuel. So peat hota kya hai? It is a substance. Here is the sphagnum species of a moss that leads to the formation of peat. Peat is used for domestic heating purposes as an alternative to firewood, as well as it is also used as the packing material for the transshipment of living material because it has the water holding capacity. So there are two roles that are being provided by this peat, that first of all it will be used as the domestic fuel. And ये एक इतना efficient domestic fuel है that is along with using it for household cooking, it can also be used to generate small amount of electricity. And also it is used as the packing material. So this is a particular economic importance that is being contributed by the bryophytes. Further, we see that mosses along with lichens are the first organisms to colonize rocks and hence are of great ecological importance. So if उनकी economic importance less है, but उनकी जो ecological importance है वो बहुत high है, because plant succession के case में we observe that the lichens are the first members to colonize a particular rocky area. But along with those, the mosses are also there and they help in the plant succession. Also, there is one more role, that is the mosses form dense mats on the soil. They reduce the impact of falling rain and prevent soil erosion. The bryophytes are divided into three classes, and these classes are Hepaticopsida, that means the liverworts. Next we have the Anthoceratopsida, that is the hornworts. And the third class is Bryopsida, that is mosses. So first of all we will discuss the liverworts. The liverworts grow usually in moist, shady habitats such as the banks of streams, marshy grounds, damp soil, bark of trees and deep in the woods. So this is the growth of the liverworts that we can see in the display. The plant body of a liverwort is thalloid. Example is Markentia. So this is the structure of Markentia, in which we can see the male gametophyte as well as the female gametophyte. The thallus is prostrate, dorsiventral and closely appressed to the substrate. So it is closely attached to it with the help of the rhizoids. The leafy members have tiny leaf-like appendages present in two rows on the stem-like structures. Vegetative reproduction in liverworts takes place by fragmentation of thalli, and the singular for the term thalli is thallus. Or the other way of vegetative reproduction is by the formation of specialized structures called as gemma. And gemma or gemmi is the plural form and gemma is the singular form. So here we can see the structure. Gemmi are green multicellular asexual buds which develop in small receptacles called as gemma cups located on the thalli. So here we can see the thallus structure, on the top of which there is the formation of the gemma cups, and they are responsible for vegetative reproduction in the body. The gemmi become detached from the parent body and germinate to form new individuals. So we can relate it like that. जैसे हम ब्रायोफाइलम के केस में पढ़ते हैं कि जो ब्रायोफाइलम की लीफ होती है उसके ऊपर वेजिटेटिव बड्स प्रोड्यूस होती हैं, राइट, एंड दोज विल बी फॉलिंग अपार्ट एंड विल लीड टू द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ न्यू इंडिविजुअल. सिमिलरली ब्रायोफाइट्स के केस में हम क्या देख रहे हैं कि जो थैलस वाली बॉडी है उसके ऊपर ये जेमा कप प्रोड्यूस हो जाते हैं, और जब ये जेमा कप इस बॉडी से डिटैच होते हैं तो वो एक नए इंडिविजुअल में जर्मिनेट करते हैं. During sexual reproduction, male, that is the antheridia, and female, that is the archegonia, sex organs are produced on the same or on different thalli. So here I can see that the Archegonia and Antheridia are formed on the same body, the same thallus. The sporophyte is differentiated into a foot, seta and capsule. So here we can see the display that there is the presence of rhizoids at the base. There is a gametophyte, and then the sporophyte body is comprising of a capsule, a seta as well as a foot. After meiosis, the spores are produced within the capsule. So this capsule structure that you are seeing at the apex contains the spores that are produced after the process of reduction division, that is meiosis. Some members like Marchantia also produce elaters in the capsule which help in spore dispersal. So question usually हमसे पूछा जाता है that elater mechanism किस organism में देखा जाता है, and the correct answer for that is Marchantia. Elaters are basically the structures that help in the dispersal of the spores. These spores germinate to form free-living gametophytes. So again completing the life cycle and forming the gametophytes. Next we have the hornworts. The plant body of hornworts like Anthoceros is also thalloid, consisting of rhizoids. So here is the representation of the same. They possess elongated horn-like sporophytes. Here we can see that the gametophytic body and the sporophytes are like the horns, just like on the head of the cow, the horns are there. Similarly, these horn-like structures are the sporophytes of the body. The sporophyte consists of foot, intercalary meristematic zone and a capsule. The capsule produces spores and the pseudo-elaters. So here you can see that there is the presence of the structure, that is the sporophyte, consisting of the foot, the intercalary meristematic zone and the capsule. And these capsules are having the pseudo-elaters. That means they are not the true elater bodies, they are the pseudo-elaters and helps in the spore dispersal. Next we have the mosses. The predominant stage of the life cycle of moss is the gametophyte, which consists of two stages. हमने स्टार्टिंग में ये बात डिस्कस की है कि जो हमारा ब्रायोफाइट हमारे पास वेराइटी है, तो ब्रायो Next we have the mosses, the third class. The predominant stage of the life cycle of a moss is gametophyte, which consists of two stages. So beginning में ही हमने ये decide किया. Next we have mosses. The predominant stage of the life cycle of a moss is gametophyte, which consists of two stages. So beginning में ही हमने ये discuss किया that bryophytes, the main body is the gametophyte, and in this case in the mosses there is the further two substages. Here you can see the growth of the mosses all around the area. The first stage, called as juvenile stage, is the protonema, which develops directly from a spore. So here you can see the structure, that is the protonema. It is a creeping, green, branched and frequently filamentous stage. So आप यहाँ पे clearly देख सकते हैं filament like structure is there. It is green, branched as well as it is creeping in nature. The second stage is the adult leafy stage called as the Gametophore, which develops from the protonema as a lateral adventitious bud. So हमने देखा कि जो first stage थी वो थी protonema. Protonema से जब further next हमारे पास stage develop होगी, that is the Gametophore, and this Gametophore is present as a lateral adventitious bud. So here is the display of the same. And this is the second stage, that is of Gametophore. They consist of upright slender axes bearing spirally arranged leaves. So these are the spirally arranged leaves. They are attached to the soil through multicellular and branched rhizoids. So the branched rhizoids are there, and these branched rhizoids helps the body to attach to the soil. This stage bears the sex organs. That means जो first stage है उसमें sex organs are not there, but in the second stage the sex organs are present for the reproduction process. Vegetative reproduction in mosses is by fragmentation, jenny formation and budding in the secondary protonema. In sexual reproduction, the sex organs Antheridia and Archegonia are produced at the apex of the leaf shoots, intermixed with multicellular uniseriate filamentous sterile hairs called as paraphyses. So here you can see the structure of paraphyses as well as Antheridium, and they are the sterile hair. That means they are not performing any role of, the reproduction, the sexual reproduction. Actually, the main sex organs here are the Antheridia and Archegonia that will be performing the function of the same. After fertilization, the zygote develops into sporophyte consisting of a foot, seta and capsule. The sporophyte in the mosses is more elaborate than in liverworts. The capsule contains the spores. Spores are formed after meiosis from the spore mother cells. So the whole system is same, whole phenomena is going on same, and the different structures are forming in the body. The mosses have an elaborate mechanism of spore dispersal. So how do they disperse the spore? They contain peristomial teeth which help in the dispersal of spores. So in the initial, that is the liverworts and hornworts, we saw that there was a structure that is called as the elater, and the elater or the pseudo-elater, and they were helping in the spore dispersal. But in mosses, the criteria is a little bit different. There is a special structure that is called as the peristomial teeth which helps in the dispersal of spores. So here you can see this peristomial teeth-like structure, and they are helping in the dispersal of the spores. Common examples of mosses are Funaria, that is the cord moss, Polytrichum, that is the hair cap moss, and the Sphagnum, that is the peat moss. So this is the cord moss. Next we have the hair cap moss. And the third we have Sphagnum, that is the peat moss. Next we will discuss Terridophytes. So what are Terridophytes? The Terridophytes include club mosses. Here we can see the structure of club mosses. Next the horsetails, that is the same, and we have the ferns. These are the ferns. तो ये structures first and second structure हम इतना generally अगर नहीं भी देखें, लेकिन ये जो last structure है, that is of ferns, we normally see at the florist shops, the ferns are there and they are used in the bouquets and all. So you must have seen the structure. Pteridophytes are used for medicinal purpose and as soil binders. So soil को bind करने के लिए, so that soil erosion ना हो, they are used for the purpose. They are also frequently grown as the ornamentals. They are very beautiful ornamental plants and they are used for the same purpose. So this is the economic importance basically. Evolutionarily, they are the first terrestrial plants to possess the vascular tissues. So जब हम evolution की बात कर रहे हैं, different organisms evolve करते हैं जब, तो we say कि जो Terridophytes की जब evolution हुई, so they were the first bodies that were containing, first plant structures that were containing the vascular tissues. So unlike the Bryophytes, they are having the vascular tissues in them. They are embryophytic, archegoniate, vascular, that means tracheophytic. और हमारे जो Bryophytes थे वो क्या थे? Atracheophytic. But these are the tracheophytic organisms, that is the tracheophytic cryptogams. Further we see the Terridophytes are found in cool, damp, shady places though some may flourish well in the sandy soil conditions. You may recall that in bryophytes, the dominant phase in the life cycle is the gametophytic, that is the haploid plant body. But in case of Terridophytes, the main plant body is Sporophyte, which is differentiated into two roots, stems and leaves. So in this case, they are a little advanced than the Bryophytes. They have a proper vascular system with them. They are also having the Sporophyte body as well as the true roots, stems and leaves. The true roots, stems and leaves were absent in case of Bryophytes. These organs possess well-differentiated vascular tissues. The roots are adventitious roots. First of all, the stem. The stem internally shows epidermis, cortex and stele. The stele may be protostele, that is the central core, internally xylem surrounded by phloem. So protostele वाला structure कैसा होता है? That means जो central core है, internally वो xylem present होगा वहाँ पे and it will be surrounded by phloem. So this is the structure we can see over here. First, let us discuss stem. The stem is internally it shows epidermis, cortex and stele that we see in the transverse section. The stele may be protostele and protostele is central core internally xylem surrounded by phloem. So जब phloem bundle surround करता है xylem को and उस particular situation में हम उसको क्या बोलते हैं? Protostele. So this is the representation of the same. We have phloem that is surrounding the xylem and this is the protostele. It can be siphonostele, that is the medullated protostele. Here we can see the structure that is the central part called as medulla. It is surrounded by xylem. It is further surrounded by phloem. This kind of stele is called as siphonostele. It can be solenostele, that is siphonostele with scattered leaf gaps. So here is the structure. We can see that there is the presence of medulla again in the center. Then there is the presence of xylem. It is further surrounded by phloem. But in the mean, we can see that there is the scattered leaf gaps. Next we have the solenostele. It is the siphonostele with scattered leaf gaps. So here we can see that there is the presence of medulla in the center. We have the surrounding structure that is of the xylem and again it is surrounded by phloem. But in between we can see the scattered leaf gaps and that is why it is another kind of stele, that is the solenostele. So these are the leaf gaps that we can see in the structure. Next is the dictyostele, that is dissected siphonostele with overlapping leaf gaps. Over here we see the leaf gaps are overlapping. Again in the center there is medulla, it is surrounded by xylem, then the phloem bundle is there and we can see overlapped the leaf gaps over there and this kind of stele is named as dictyostele. Next we have the leaf. The leaves in Terridophyte are small, that is they are called as microphylls as in Selaginella, or they can be large, that is the macrophylls as in ferns. So the term fill, हम fill term किसके लिए use करते हैं? Leaf के लिए use करते हैं. So if it is small in structure, it is called as microphylls, and if they are large in structure, they are called as macrophylls, and that is in the case of Selaginella and ferns respectively. The sporophytes bear sporangia that are subtended by leaf-like appendages called as sporophylls. So, the leaf-like structure that will bear the spores, they are called as sporophylls. Here we can see the sporophyll and there is the presence of the sporangium. So, जो हमारा leaf-like structure है, उसे हमने sporophyll बोला और वो क्या bear करेगा? Sporangium. और sporangium के अंदर क्या present होगा? The developing spores. The development of sporangium may be leptosporangiate or eusporangiate. So what do we understand by this? The sporangia produces spores by meiosis in spore mother cells. So here we can see the structure over here. There is the presence of the leaf below which is the presence of the sporangium, and the sporangium are the structure in which the spores will be developing. In majority of the Terridophytes, all the spores are of similar kind. Such plants are termed as Homosporous. Genera like Selaginell and Salvinia, which produce two kinds of spores, that is the macro or the megaspores and microspores, are described as heterosporous. That means जब size spore का vary करेगा तो हम उस situation में उसे क्या बोलेंगे? Heterosporous. That means different spores. Whereas if they are same in size, it is homosporous. That is the same spores. So here is the structure of Selaginell as well as Salvinia, in which we see the formation of heterospores. In some cases, sporophylls may form distinct compact structures called as strobili or cones. That is in the case of Selaginell and Equisetum. Here we can see these structures called as strobili, and in general we call them as cones. The spores germinate to give rise to inconspicuous, small but multicellular, free-living, mostly photosynthetic thalloid gametophytes called as prothalli. So again the life cycle is getting completed. So the stage of gametophyte in this has come, to which we are calling as prothalli. These gametophytes require cool, damp, shady places to grow. So this is the gametophyte that we see over here. The fern prothallus with developing sporophytes. So sporophytes will be developing on it, and there is the sporophyte root, the presence of rhizoids as well as the prothallus. So this prothallus is what? It is the gametophyte, and it will lead to the formation of sporophyte in which the spores will be forming. So this prothallus is basically the haploid structure. Due to the need for water for fertilization, the spread of living Terridophytes is limited and restricted to narrow geographical regions. The gametophytes bear male and female sex organs called antheridia and archegonia respectively. That means same as in case of bryophytes. There is the presence of antheridia, there is the presence of archegonia. This is a microscopic structure that we see over here. The sex organs are multicellular, jacketed as well as sessile. Sessile means they cannot move. In heterosporous plants, the megaspores and microspores germinate and give rise to female and male gametophytes respectively. Water is required for the transfer of antherozoids. That means when there will be the transfer of the male gametes, then there will be the requirement of water for the same. Fusion of male gamete with the egg present in archegonium results in the formation of zygote. So again simple ये हम हमेशा समझते ही हैं कि जब male gamete और female gamete mix करेंगे तो there will be the formation of zygote. The male gametes released from antheridia to the mouth of archegonium, and for this travel water is required. This is called as zooidigamous oogamy. Why I am calling it as oogamy? As we discussed earlier, oogamy means there will be a female gamete that will be. This is called zooidigamous oogamy. And why oogamy? Because the male gamete is motile and the female gamete is large and it cannot move. It is immotile in structure and hence oogamy. The female gametophytes in these plants are retained on the parent sporophyte for variable periods. The development of zygotes into the young embryos take place within the female gametophytes. So here we can see the life cycle of the Terridophytes. Initially there is a Gametophyte. The Gametophyte will lead to the formation of the sperm as well as egg, and this egg will be having So here we see the life cycle of Terridophyte, in which there is a Gametophyte. Gametophyte will lead to the formation of the male, there is the male organ and the female organ, that means the antheridia and archegonium, and they will be leading to the formation of the sperms and the egg. The sperms are motile because it is oogamy, and that is why they will be coming to the egg and will lead to the formation of a diploid zygote. This diploid zygote will undergo mitosis and lead to the formation of a diploid sporophyte. Now this sporophyte will again undergo meiosis to form the spores. Now यहाँ पे जो sporophyte है वो हमारी actual main plant body है, and this main plant body is leading to the formation of the spores, because इस main plant body के ऊपर ही हमने देखा कि sporophytes occur करते हैं, and they will lead to the formation of haploid spores. These haploid spores will again undergo mitosis and will lead to the formation of haploid gametophyte, and the cycle goes on like that. This event is a precursor to the seed habit, considered an important step in evolution. So evolution basically जो सीड की फॉर्मेशन होना स्टार्ट हुआ वो हम बोलते हैं कि इवॉल्व होते होते ऑर्गेनिजम्स ने सीड प्रोड्यूस करने शुरू करे. सो ये जो हमारा पर्टिकुलर इवेंट है, इट इज अ प्रीकर्सर टू द सीड हैबिट, एंड इट इज कंसीडर्ड वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट स्टेप इन एवोल्यूशन. The embryo thereafter produces a multicellular, well-differentiated sporophyte, which is the dominant phase in Teredidophytes. In ferns like Bryophteris, the stem is an underground rhizome. So here we can see the structure of Bryophteris. And the main thing to be noted here is the stem is an underground rhizome. So जो stem है वो underground होती है इसके केस में. The large aerial leaves, generally pinnately compound, are called as fronds. So what do we call the leaves in this case? They are called as fronds. आप यहाँ पे क्लियरली देख सकते हैं कि यहाँ पे एक स्टेराइल फ्रॉन्ड है और एक फर्टाइल फ्रॉन्ड है. और फर्टाइल फ्रॉन्ड को हमने फर्टाइल क्यों बोला? बिकॉज इट इज बेयरिंग द स्पोरोफाइट्स, द ब्राउन कलर्ड स्ट्रक्चर्स दैट यू सी. And the sterile one is having no sporophyte, and that is why it is sterile. It will further do not lead to the formation of the gametes or the spores that we call, and that is why it is sterile. Whereas the fertile frond is having the sorus, and it will lead to the formation of spores. Young leaves show circinate venation. That means circinate venation से हम क्या समझते हैं? The coiling from the tip to the base. So this is the coiling from the tip to the base, and this is called as circinate venation. Here is the structure in which we see the frond and blade. So अगर मैं petiole वाले पार्ट को भी इंक्लूड करूं तो उस स्ट्रक्चर को हम क्या बोलते हैं? फ्रॉन्ड. लेकिन अगर मैं सिर्फ ऊपर वाले पार्ट को नोट करूं, that is only the leafy part, it is called as the blade, and it is a structure of polypodium. The petioles are covered with the brown multicellular hairs called as ramenta. So आप यहाँ पे clearly देख सकते हैं कि brown small hair like structure are there, and they are called as ramenta. The leaflets show open dichotomous or furcate venation. The sporangia are formed on the ventral or lower surface of the leaf, that is the sporophyll, in the groups, and these are called as sori. So these are the structure. आप clearly यहाँ पे sporophyll का जो structure देख रहे हो, that means जो leaf का structure देख रहे हो, वहाँ पे हम क्या देख रहे हैं? That there is the presence of the sporophytes, and they are called as the sori. And single is the term sorus. Now each sorus is covered by a membranous sheath of its own, and it is called true indusium. So here we can see the structure of indusium, and this is the true indusium. and the whole structure is called as sorus. The antherozoids in ferns are generally spirally coiled and multiciliate. In some ferns like Paris, each sorus is protected by a reflexed margin of the fertile leaflet, which is called as false indusium. So in this case, we can clearly see the structure of the false indusium. The Terridophytes are further classified into 4 classes and they are Psilopsida, that is Xylotum, उसका एक example है. Lycopsida, the examples are Selaginell and Lycopodium. Sphenopsida, the example is Equisetum, and Pteropsida, the examples are Bryopteres, Teres, Edientum, etc., commonly called as ferns. I hope you understood the explanation. Thanks for watching.